Welcome to the London Horror Movie Club. I'm horror writer Lauren Jane Barnett.
And I'm Chris Sapikowski, Lauren's older brother, and I've been watching horror movies since I was 8.
Join us as we talk about the wild, weird, and wonderful horror films set in England's eerie capital. Hi, horror fans, and welcome back. This month, we are taking you into the eerie and delightful auditory wilderness. Joining us is the godfather of hauntology, the musician and creator behind the Séance at Hobs Lane, the Wicker Tapes, and the Amicus-inspired the Portmanteau of Horrors, which we've just found out Sub Exotic is going to be re-releasing soon. He has been experimenting with sound effects, music, and our psychological experiences of space and sound since the early 70s. So he is fabulously exciting. Welcome, Drew Mulholland.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
So I hope you don't mind. I'm going to start with the sound effects. And I know people ask you about it all the time, but I'm genuinely really curious. I know you used to love like the BBC sound effects albums, but was there a movie or a TV show where the sound effects you really loved or hated had like a strong reaction to?
That's a really good question. Probably subconsciously. Things like those 60s TV shows like The Avengers, The Prisoner, Man in a Suitcase. If there's regular music playing, it probably didn't penetrate. But it's when you got, especially the horror films, you'd get strange sound effects. And what I now realize is post-production. So, and it was sound rather than music. So it was sound that was creating an atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And it just must have gone in. And, the rest is historical.
There was a BBC, and forgive me since I'm in America, like I'm not familiar with like the sound effects albums. And she mentioned the BBC album.
Yeah.
Of sound effects.
Yeah.
Is it just sound effects that are used in different programming on the BBC?
I'm not sure any of it was actually used on the BBC, but they were. It's kind of really charming. There's a disclaimer on the back that if you wanted to use any of the sounds on your Super 8 cine films at home, you were given permission. So it's very much that kind of low key thing, but it wasn't. I think it was for radio as well. They used, maybe if there was an interview or something, they would have some sounds in the background. But I just thought they were wonderful. I did. I published a book last year about growing up and discovering tape music and composition and tape loops. And one thing I remembered while I was trying to remember it all was going to a friend's house as a teenager, and we were all into music. Punk had just happened, and I went up to a friend's house with some albums, and as we went into his bedroom, his mum shouted, "Keep the noise down." And David said, "Oh, it's okay, Mum. Drew's bought his sound effects albums again." It was just when I remembered that I could actually see the whole scene. Let's put the Clash on. No, listen to aircraft taking off 10 seconds. And then the Clash would go on.
Was like playing with those your first foray into music? Because I know you're not traditionally trained. You kind of did it yourself.
Yeah. I really, really wanted. I went for piano lessons when I was a kid.
Oh.
But the thing is, you'd be sitting doing your scales and looking out the window, and your friends would be playing football in the street, and it's like, come on. So I just didn't. I learned the basics, and I really wanted to get into playing guitar. So this would be early 70s. I was pretty young, and I just tried and tried and tried, and I just couldn't get it. And so that was abandoned. But my mum had bought a cheap acoustic, and she was trying to learn the chords, and she couldn't do it either. So the guitar was kept behind the couch. And one night, there was just the two of us in the house, and one night I pulled the guitar out and just started, you know, trying to do something. And my mum looked over from her knitting, and she just said, "That looks right."
Oh.
So it's probably her to blame. I went, "Oh." Yeah, and I had the prerequisites, obviously, to be a guitarist because I was skinny, I was pale, and I had black mouth, kind of there. So, most important thing, obviously.
You looked the part immediately. There you go.
I think so.
I know this
Have I ever sent you the picture that my mum took of me as David Bowie?
Oh, I've got to see that. Were you a big Bowie fan then?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those. My mum had got a hold of a Polaroid camera, and she said, "Oh, stand over there and I'll take your picture." And I said, "No, hang on." And I went upstairs and did myself as David Bowie.
Oh, I gotta see it. That's amazing.
Yeah, I will send it to you. It's just, oh.
Oh, I love that. Well, that's perfect because like David Bowie also loved like the creepy, eerie movies. I know he ended up doing Labyrinth, but he was a big fan of like horror films as well.
Yeah, he was a big cinema goer. He was a voracious reader as well.
Yeah. Well, know that we were talking a little bit about the 70s, and I know Portmanteau of Horrors, which I wanna show off a little bit. I know it's getting a re-release, but how pretty is that? It's inspired by sort of 70s Amicus. Which ones did you have for like get inspired for the album, and which ones did you love that maybe didn't make it?
Well, first of all, do you know whose hand that is?
No, I want it to be Peter Cushing's. I have no idea whose is it.
It's totally unconnected to horror. Well, maybe connected to horror films. It's Aldous Huxley.
No way. How did you get Aldous Huxley's hands?
If I see something I like, I'll photograph it, and it goes into the library, and it just jumped out.
Yeah. Wow.
So
the movies that you loved that inspired it.
Well, I do kind of lump them all together. It was Taigon, Amicus, and of course Hammer. So let's see, the From Beyond the Grave, obviously. That's the one. Asylum, and even ones that weren't necessarily portmanteau films, Devil Rides Out. Just basically from about 65 to 75. That was a kind of time span. So, but also things like strange documentaries as well. Although the films were the make up 99.9% of that record. So.
Now, did you watch these films by yourself, or did your friends all get together and watch these films, or was it something that you just liked?
I watched a lot of them with my dad because in the 70s, one of the TV stations here, BBC Two, they used to have this. I think it was Saturday night, late, and it would be 2 horror films. So you would get From Beyond the Grave, and then that finished, and then you get the Wicker Man. So it was, you're just completely spoiled, So I used to watch a lot of them with my dad, and then we would critique them afterwards. My wife asked me once about growing up, and she said, "Did you ever have any arguments with your dad?" And I said, "Not really, just one major one." And she said, "What was it?" And I said, "It was about time travel." He said you could go to the past but you couldn't go to the future because it hasn't happened. And I said, if you could go one way, you can go the other. And there was a big kind of, and that was it. So, that's kind of okay. That's the only argument you have with your dad. But yeah, it was very much what we're talking about. I remember talking about the Wicker Man to him, and we're just asking if it's possible. And one of the ones I do remember is we were watching The Devil Rides Out, and it's the first time I'd seen it, and it was when Simon Aaron is at the beginning of the film, and he's got all the cult people together. And I said to my dad, where do you find people like that? And he just turned around and said, they find you. So, okay then. But yeah.
With the occult, then did you? Because I know you're interested in like why people believe what they believe and things like that. Was it because of films like that where you would see that engagement?
Well, there was a kind of parallel. One of the albums I did a couple of years ago was called Messer's Circulating Library, which was a circulating library, stroke newsagent, stroke tobacconist, stroke secondhand bookshop that was across the road from one of my aunts. And one of the books that she got was this one.
Oh.
And every time we all lived kind of 5 minutes away from each other with an extended family. And this was the one book that she always let me read whatever I wanted when I was there. She had quite a lot of books. And it was the one book that my mum wouldn't let me read when I went to my aunt and aunt's. So, of course, it's that lost. So I finally managed to track down a copy. It's the back cover.
Oh.
And the paintings in there are fantastic as well. So my aunt Nan and I used to have quite... my aunt Nan was kind of like the female version of my dad. I'd walk in and my mum was Canadian and my aunt Nan was Canadian as well. And you'd walk in at 14 years old and she said, do you want a coffee? Coffee. And do you want a cigarette? I was like, yeah. So there was never, with Nan, there was never any, oh, you're just a kid. It was just coffee and cigarettes and the occult, yeah. So with that, and again, you could talk to Nan about anything. So I was asking her about what's all this about, and there's a picture in the book, and it's a painting of a skeleton, but it's Hitler, and he's holding this crystal ball, So it's let's see if I can find it.
Yeah, go for it.
So I remember asking her, I said, well, what's all this about? And she said, well, the Nazis were very into basically stealing elements of the occult.
Oh, wow.
So,
oh, geez.
So it then became, for me, it was like, okay, whether you actually believe this stuff or not, the fact that you're using it and people are taking it as part of their belief system, then it does have power, unfortunately. So it's that sort of thing, psychological attachment to something, So, and so that was that. So with the films going on, and every Christmas, as you know, the BBC would have a play, like Stone Tape or Barchester, the one set in Barchester and Whistle and I'll Come to You and all this.
I love that one.
So it was very much that, and of course you'd have things like Children of the Stones, and other science fiction things. So it was, you realise now that it was a pretty weird time to be growing up, culturally. So that was the kind of I realize now, that it was just all kind of seeping in, and now it's, as Keith Richards said, transmission, receive, transmit. It just kind of comes in, then it comes out somehow. That was the kind of thing behind all that.
It sounds like the I don't want to say counterculture, but with like that kind of book and those kind of movies and the punk rock scene being up, it is very, it helps shape kind of your thought process at that age, being 14 years old. I mean, that's the age where everybody kind of starts with their own, not what their parents want you to be or what you think you're supposed to be, but you're starting to find your own likes and dislikes. And so that probably shaped you in some way.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And how things are connected as well. Seeing connections between things, and if say you're reading about Sex Pistols, and the Anarchy in the UK single was the first one they did. So because of that, we started reading Kropotkin's essays on anarchy, and what the real sense of it would be. And then, just I love the fact that culturally, if you're interested in something, it always leads off to other areas. Oh, you like that? You should read this or listen to this or see this. So that was part of the like stoking the fire, if you like.
You're talking about that sort of cultural moment, and then you also mentioned the power of objects, and it made me think of your Wicker tracks. I think I read somewhere that you used like a piece of the Wicker Man that had been his legs in recording. Could you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, I'll send you that picture actually.
Yes.
I had a tape loop that was part of the original Wicker Tapes, and I made a loop and I had it going around a piece of the Wicker Man. It was only about that size. So I mean, it's been done before, but the piece of the Wicker Man would actually imprint itself on the magnetic tape. So it was, it's just all that. It's not just a record. There's something behind it. Someone described it as sonic alchemy. So yeah, I'll have that. Sonic alchemist. Reputation. King of hauntology, sonic alchemist.
It's good, isn't it? They're good titles.
What got you into recording this? I mean, what made you want to start creating albums?
Well, the good thing about it was in the 80s, forgive the snoring, that's the dog over there.
Oh.
In the 80s, I learned enough on guitar to start a band. So a friend of a friend introduced me to these guys that were getting a band together, and I joined, and it was my job to come up with the riffs. So the bass player and I had this brilliant idea that would write really, really poppy stuff, get signed by a major record label, and Trojan horse, like, when we get signed, we'll go, we're not doing that stuff, we're doing this weird stuff. and of course, they would never have gone for that. But that was the plan. So we went off in a direction that ended us up being kind of in teen pin-up magazines and all this nonsense,
Yeah, I heard you were in Jackie. Is that right?
But years and years later, a friend that was in the band with Dennis said to me, "Do you regret the amount of effort and work we put in and it came to nothing?" And I said, "Absolutely not." I said, "It's because of all that stuff that I'm doing what I do now. Because you see what the big music business is like. You've met those people and you just think, that's why I think, as a as a writer, it's really, really good, because I know that my stuff wouldn't sell millions of copies, so I wouldn't be of any interest to any of those people. But the people that are into it are really into it. And there's a loyalty there, which is fantastic. And, complete artistic freedom. So, they trust me to come up with the goods, and hopefully I do. So you're not trying to please anybody, really, So that's what we've been kind of, the way it's been working. And also the other thing is, beforehand, when I started the Mount Vernon Arts Lab, I was determined that it wasn't going to be a band. So of all the musicians that I knew by then, people would come in, they'd do a couple of gigs, or they'd play an album, and then everyone knew there wasn't going to be a set band where the drummer's girlfriend doesn't get on with the singer's girlfriend, and there's, so that was part of how I got here as well. So I hope that answers your question. It's not too rambling.
Yeah, no, that does.
That's brilliant. I was thinking as well, when you were saying that, when you create your albums, you do so much more than just play the tracks. Like Portmanteau of Horrors, horror fans will absolutely love this. You've got Peter Cushing's Antique Shop. You got the excerpt. It's like an entire artistic package. How do you do that, like off gut instinct? Do you know ahead of time what you're going to create?
No, I don't. I've always decided, when I started doing records, I always thought it's got to be instinctive. So you've got to go with that. You can't go, I'm going to write this song that I hope someone at EMI likes. You just got to go, no, I'm doing it. If 2 people buy it, that's rubbish. But that's okay, because it's the whole thing. So, yeah, and also I was trained as a graphic designer, so I've always been very, very aware visually. So I thought, right, what kind of extras could I put in? So then you go down the road of, okay, Peter Cushing's Antique Shop. They must have had a card. That character, although you never see it in the film, so you go, well, what would it look like? And I don't know if anyone got this, but the name of the lane that Temptations Limited is in is actually the surname of the writer who wrote the original stories.
Oh wow! I want to put it up for the screen so people can have a look. That's the surname. How cool is that?
And 13 obviously is unlucky, so so there's a lot of that kind of playing with it and enjoying it, And then, of course, you get people, getting in touch with me going, oh, yeah, I know what you meant on this track. I'm like, what? So people do start kind of reading into things, but that's the stuff I would do. So,
Right.
I would read into things. So fair enough. I'm enjoying it.
How often do people read into things and they actually hit the mark, or is it mostly just like, yeah, that's what I was thinking, and you're just like, no, it wasn't that at all?
Probably about 50-50. I would think.
Okay.
Do you?
I think I'd be petrified to tell somebody what I was thinking it meant. Like, just that, like, I will read sometimes, and especially music. I enjoy music, but I don't. When it comes to the words and the poetry behind the music and songs, I can't pretend to know what the meaning was behind it. You hear a Beatles song, like, well, that was about this. I'm like, how is Hey Jude about this? Because it's named something different. Like, so to me, I'm like, what is this all about? So I don't even pretend to do that. But when I hear other people say it, I'm like, is that what it really meant? Or is that, the words just rhyme?
Well, one of the kind of key points for me was all my stuff's instrumental. And people have said things to me that have been really, really intriguing. There's on the first album, first Mount Vernon album, Nova, this 80-year-old woman was kind of forced to listen to it. And when it finished, she said, I really liked it, but there was one track that made me feel really suffocated and trapped, like being trapped in a cave. And she hadn't seen the track list. And it was a track called feldspar, which is a mineral that grows in caves. Yeah. So there was something in that track, that made her feel extremely uncomfortable. So it's that, and I've had a few of them over the years. There was when I was composing in residence at Glasgow Uni, I did basically an album of chamber music, and one of the tracks, again instrumental, was a string quartet, and we had a couple of rehearsals, and the second violinist, Philip, came over to me and he said quietly in the chapel, that's where we were rehearsing, he said, that track, Sycamore, the first one. I was like, yeah. He says, what happened? I was like, what do you mean? He said, that's really, really, it's as though you came through something really traumatic. I said, yeah, I did. And he said, but I take it all ended well. And I said, oh, why do you think that? He says, because it's all minor chords. And then it goes up to an A major, which is like, so it ends on a really high up note. And I just thought, how on earth did you figure that out? I said, it's true, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but yeah, it was something that was absolutely horrible. But he somehow, it came out and he picked up on it. So that was interesting. And that's happened a few times. And that's
amazing. It's got to make you feel. Does that make you feel does that make you feel good when they kind of see that, or do you just like the fact that they're feeling things, or were you trying to get that message apart, maybe subconsciously?
No, not at all, because the thing is, the music for Sycamore was written, and I didn't have a title. And then one day, I can't go into it, but one day I saw the word Sycamore, and that's it. It just fell into place.
Wow.
So that was interesting. Yeah. So, but there's all sorts of strange connections. I mean, the good thing, when I was lecturing in psychogeography at the uni, the one thing I always warned the students day one was, with psychogeography, you will notice a lot of coincidences. Please don't take them as messages from beyond or anything other than, you're in this space and you're doing psychogeography. When you finish your walk, leave it, because you could go mad. You start seeing, messages and everything, car number plates, shop signs, It's just that you're psychologically tuned in at that time when you're doing it. So I just accept it and then keep going.
How do you, because some of your work, you delve into that really heavily. Like, I mean, obviously Séance at Hobs Lane has quite a lot of psychogeography to it, but I mean, a little bit of all of your work is very much that atmosphere of these connections and this interconnectivity. How do you then kind of take your own advice? How do you dive into this world, create this world, but then also don't let it overrun you?
It's actually a very, very practical reason, because by the time a record's coming to the end, the production and all that stuff, I've got to start writing the next one.
Oh yeah.
So so all the albums since COVID have all dovetailed into each other. So I'm lucky enough that people will release them, or if I want to do a really limited thing like you've got, um, you don't really get time to stop and think about it because I say you could drive yourself nuts, you know, and I'm there already, so.
Oh.
How long does it take you to write an album? I don't know what goes into it all, but what is a time frame for an average length of an
Pretty
album?
quick, to be honest. Once the idea, once the seed is there, it uh, it grows very, very quickly, and it even comes into things like I think I'd maybe done about 1.5 tracks for the Portmanteau record, and that's when I started thinking, well, Temptations Limited must have a business card. So you start, it's very intense for quite a short period of time, and then it's done, and then you're on to the next one. But there is probably, a line that goes through all of the records. I would imagine. But of course, I'm the one person that won't see it because it's kind of what I do. So, but the other thing, to go back to one of your earlier questions, was we stayed in an area in Glasgow in the East End called Denniston, and the library there was brilliant because we used to go down every Tuesday evening, I think it was, and these are the kind of books that were available, right?
Oh, amazing.
Right?
Ooh, cool. Awesome.
And not forgetting, of course.
Oh, yeah, brilliant.
And also, I mean, I don't know if it was the same in the States, but there was magazines that would come out every fortnight, and it'd be to do with the occult, levitation, ghosts, and these weren't in specialist bookshops. These were in main street newsagents. So that was again what was kind of around at the time as well. Magazines like The Unexplained. It was just you don't think at that age, wow, this is a great time to be living in. You just go, oh, this is good. We'll take that. And now, everything's going to come full circle, with people, not even the next generation after me, but the next generation after them have gone, right, this is a whole period that we can dive into, hence the interest in hauntology and psychogeography and all this. But there was people like Johnny Trunk, starting off doing that and putting out the Wicker Man soundtrack. And he did loads and loads of really interesting stuff, still does. So there was a few of us, and then gradually, people find out and they buy records and, come to gigs and whatever. So, yeah, I mean, it was just all very natural and not forced at all. And I genuinely think people pick up on that. One of the first reviews that I got was, and at the time I took it as a compliment, but I don't know if it was, said, no one would put a record out like this unless they meant it.
Oh, wow.
So
that is definitely a compliment.
Yeah, I think so. So that was nice. But even things like on the label of the first album, Nova, there was I found an old photograph of a theremin from the 1930s, and it was all painted with music notes and symbols and things. And I put that on the label. So a couple of months later, I get a phone call from the guy that wrote "Video Killed the Radio Star,"
Oh, yeah.
and he said, I just got hold of your album, and you know the theremin you've got on it. He said, I own that.
No.
Bruce Willis, yeah. It's so you go, okay. So I mean, that has just been that's just natural for me now. Just all these kind of mad things. And for the second album, I had to borrow a theremin from a guy who just started making them down in England. Barry Wooding, his name was. And Barry was lovely. He just said, look, you need a theremin for the album. I'll just send one to you. And send it back when you're done. So that was really nice. So once the album was done, I sent him a couple of copies, and I gave his business a thank you on the label, on the artwork. And about a week later, he phoned and said, thanks for the album. He says, I was playing it to one of my friends the other night. He's a musician. He just wondered if you'd like to do some recording with him. I said, oh, yeah, great. I said, so what's his stuff like? And he said, do you know Portishead? I was like, yeah, it's like Portishead. He said, no, it's Portishead. It's Adrian Utley.
Holy cow.
So, and I think if you travel with that kind of spirit of, I suppose, sharing, somehow that just resonates with some people. So I called Adrian and we were just like this, so we did an album together. And shortly after that, I sent Adrian an album that I recorded in a nuclear bunker. And on the artwork, it was photographs of First and Second World War military ruins that are all over the place in Scotland, in the middle of nowhere. And Adrian called and he said, oh, thanks for the album. I had a friend round last night and he really loved those photographs. And he was wondering, if he could talk to you about where these places are and how many of them are still left. And I was like, yeah, great, give him my number. And he said, oh, you probably know him as an actor. And I said, oh, right. I said, what films has he been in? What TV has he done? And he said, he was in With Neil and I. Uh-huh. And it was Paul McGann.
Was it for... Oh, shit. Oh, my God.
So Paul phones about an hour later. And he did a track. He did a vocal piece on a narration explaining what psychogeography was. And that went on to the Norwood Variations record album. And recently, it just shows you how these weird things connect. About a year ago, one of my absolute favorite records was the first Generation X record from 78, I think it was. And I really loved the guitar on it, forever. And I just thought, I'm going to find Derwood Andrews and I'm going to ask him to be able to record. And so I found him and sent him some of my stuff and he was like, yeah, let's do it. So while that was going on, we did an album called Doppelgangers because there was an awful lot of coincidences between us. We both have the same breed of dogs. We both have 77 in our addresses. There's all sorts of madness. And so we did some music together. And there was a track I really needed something, couldn't figure out what it was. And then Paul sent me, without knowing about it, he sent me some songs that he had done, very heavy distorted guitar, for a play. And I just said, I phoned him, I said, right, can I use these? Yeah. he said, obviously don't use any of the lyrics because I didn't do them. He said, but I wrote the music. So Paul ended up in the same album as Dermot Andrews.
Wow. It sounds like you really love collaborating. Is that something that you've done more and more of, or does it just happen naturally and as and when?
It just happens naturally. You can't. I don't think you can really. I mean, when I contacted Derwood, it was just. I mean, you know, that was mad ideas you get. You know, I wonder what he's doing now. What's he up to? And then I found him on Instagram and just sent him a message. And basically, it was a fanboy. You know, I said, I've always loved that guitar playing, but you know, what kind of guitar do you use, and amps and all this kind of thing. And he got back really quickly, and we just started, you know, back and forth. And then one time I just said, right, I've been building myself up to ask you this question. Would you like to do a record together? And he's like, yeah, right. So that was for me. That was just, you know. So you've got one of Generation X on your record, you've got Doctor Who on your record, you know, you've got Portishead. Yeah, it's been fun.
Oh, sorry.
You know what the best thing was? This won't be out until November. But there was, I was going to, my wife and I were going to a conference in London, and I needed guitar strings. So, I don't know if you've heard of Denmark Street.
Oh yeah.
You know, so it's all mostly guitar shop. So there's any numbers to choose from. So I said, right, I'm just popping in to get some strings. And she came in and I went to the counter and bought the strings. And I said, I've heard that somewhere in Denmark Street is the room where the Sex Pistols lived when they started. And there's just one big room, and you know they rehearsed there as well. I said, have you any idea where it is? And he says, yeah, it's through here. Do you want to see it?
What?
And I could just hear from behind my wife going, oh. So what I did, I took some photographs, obviously, because John and Rotten's graffiti is still on the wall. Oh. So I took some photographs, and I also recorded about 10 minutes of the ambient sound in the room. And I'm bringing it out as an LP in November, because that's the 50th anniversary of the first gig.
That's amazing.
So, but the advert's going to say, you know, in a shameless cash-in, but very much in that kind of spirit. So that's all ready to go. So and it was really, really interesting doing the research for that as well. There was a lot of early flyers for their gigs that I'd never ever seen before. And newspaper clippings from the very, very early days, around about that November 1975 till about summer 76. And it's the essence of the room, essentially. So, yeah. I can't wait for November to come around to get that out.
That'll be great. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. How would people be able to get it if they want one? Do they just go to you, or do they go to distributor?
I'm on Instagram, so you know, if anyone's interested, just get in touch.
But we had wanted to know if there was a space that you wish you'd had a chance to record in, because you've talked about some of the great places you have, but is there somewhere in the back of your mind you'd love to try and record in? It doesn't even have to be a real space, like it can be an imagined space.
God, honestly, so many. I mean, I've recorded there's actually a moor in the middle of York called Hobs Moor. Right, so I've recorded there, and that'll be coming out at some point. And I couldn't believe it, because the way you got onto Hobs Moor is Hobs Lane.
No way.
Honestly.
You of all people actually will appreciate this. So I'm speaking of like little things that are randomly in my office. I've got a wee little Hobs Lane with the alien ship and everything.
That's great.
It's amazing. Was that one of the was Hammer basically one of the main early ones that you love to watch?
Sorry, what?
Were Hammer films the main kind of early ones that you love to watch?
Yeah, it was just. I mean, it became. This is pre even VHS recording. Obviously, if you didn't see it, then you missed it. That was it. But my dad would. I remember playing football in the street once, and my dad opening the window, and he said, "Peter Cushing's coming on tonight." So you didn't even have to know it was a Hammer film. Just like Peter Cushing, that kind of covered everything. It was a whole Hammer.
Heck yeah.
It just it was just a great time. And of course, as you see them as an adult, they're a bit creaky, but it's just it was a great kind of part of the environment at that time.
Yeah.
I remember I think I was about 16 or 17, and my cousin called me, one of my cousins, pardon me, and he said, "Oh, did you see that film last night? The guy that was in The Clockwork Orange, isn't it? It's set in a public school, and they kill all the teachers at the end." And so the F, obviously. And I said no, because the night before I was away to see The Clash at the Apollo, so I missed it. But when it came on a year later, I said, "Oh, John recommended this," and told everybody, and we all got together and watched it, and we're like, wow, couldn't believe it. And then we had one friend who was, he was very, he knew everything, about everything. He's 17, and so we're sitting in a kind of triangle shape. So he was at the front at the television, we were kind of behind him. And when the film finished, as the credits were coming up, he turned around and announced to us all, "Oh, you realise, of course, why some of it was in black and white and some of it was in colour, and that I was supposed to emphasise." And a moment later, the BBC continuity voice comes on and it said, "If anyone was wondering why some of it's in colour and some of it's in black and white, it's because, quite simply, the director ran out of money." And he couldn't get away because the TV was in front of him. We're all behind him in hysterics. So that was good.
I love that. I'm curious if with all the psychology of sound and stuff, we haven't gotten to talk about that so much. Do you have sort of a sound effect or a sound that is one of those things that really resonates with a strong memory for you?
Yeah. Did I send you the book?
No, but I am going to get it the second we're off.
I'll send you the PDF.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah, because right now I'm actually reading it's another book on horror sound. It's called Uncanny Bodies. I'll show you it off camera if you're interested in it. But it's about sound as well, and it match up perfectly.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, I asked about if you had a sound or a sound effect or something that resonated really strongly with a memory.
Well, this is in the book. Where I grew up, in Mount Vernon, there was the estate we lived in, and then there was a lane, and the other side of the lane was wheat fields. Really bucolic, brilliant place to play as a kid, and it was full of bomb craters from the war, because behind that was one of the main, still is, one of the main railway lines between Glasgow and Edinburgh. But between our house and the railway, there was a scrap metal dealer that was heavy. They broke up heavy industrial equipment. So we built furnaces and trains, and it was massive. So you'd always hear the humming of this electromagnet that would go over and pick up the scrap, and the kind of tearing of metal. So on one hand you had all this cacophony going on, and then you'd go 100 yards and it would be wheat fields and all sorts. So I think that was definitely, I realize now that was definitely a kind of major thing. But when some of those recordings came out, I can't remember what album they were on, but some of them came out, and a journalist said, "Oh, Drew Mulholland invented industrial music in 1973 or something." So yeah, I mean, it was. I suppose it's always kind of been like that. You know, that's, if I had to pick one thing, it would be the sound of Mick Williams' Scrapyard and Demolition.
Wow.
And the thing is, one of my records, Deltic Vespers, which was a compilation of all the early stuff, I thought, right, well, when I started, what was the main thing that got me interested in field recording? And it was Mick Williams. And I thought, right, I'll have a look on the internet if I can see any images, but there won't be. I mean, there's no chance there's going to be, you know, because it's middle of nowhere, and then 5 images, you know.
Wow.
I could not believe it. You know, and it's funny because I have an exact visual memory of what it looked like. I thought, and then I saw the photographs, and it's exactly as I remember it. So that was nice. Very, very nice coincidence. So yeah, I would say that place definitely. But tunnels as well. There was on the other side of the fields I was mentioning, there was an abandoned railway. So, you know, there was a tunnel. So, you know, being safety conscious and clearing it with HR before, you know, we went in. Total death trap, you know. It's just not gonna, it was good to physically and mentally have that space, you know, because you could be climbing over scrap metal, you know, 1 minute, and then the next thing you're in the middle of a wheat field with scarecrows, you know. So it was, yeah, it's all downhill from there, really.
I was gonna say, it sounds like kind of perfect horror film setting, doesn't it?
Yeah, because one of the we used to find shells from the gun batteries that would be firing up at the German bombers. And, you know, someone claimed, although I never saw it, someone claimed they found parts of a machine gun. And, you know, there was a lot of, I'm not trying to be funny, but there's a lot of layers, you know, to the whole place. It's very, it's such an interesting place to grow up. You know, so many, I realize now there's so many influences from it.
That's amazing. That's quite a beautiful thing to end on. Unless, Chris, did you have something else? Sorry.
No, I don't. I just say that's very interesting because where we grew up, or at least like I'm a little older than you, but like I'm very suburban, so like it doesn't have the layers, but it has different layers. It's different feel, you know. But yeah, no, that's very interesting, and I'm definitely going to go online and get a couple of your albums. I want to hear. I need to sit and listen. I'm going to try to find what it means, and then I'll completely butcher it. But
well, the thing is, I mean, it's happened a couple of times that people have pointed things out to me that I didn't realize. So it can, in a way, it kind of bypasses, you know, the part of your brain that was investigated. It's gone straight to Rhino. How old are you, Chris?
I'll be 47 in a month. So I was born in the late 70s.
Right. I was 64 last week.
Oh my God.
Oh wow.
So I'm considerably older than you.
I mean,
well, you look younger than I do, so that's good.
So, given your career, obviously you had to be, but like, it's amazing. Well done. This music keeps you young.
That's the thing. I mean, you always remember, I won't name names, obviously, But there was one well-known musician who I know was born the same year as me. And he said, but he claimed to have been born 5 or 6 years later, you know? So he was talking about what gigs he went to. And he said, yeah, I remember seeing The Clash at the Apollo and seeing The Jam and blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, you're going to gigs when you're 9. Good.
Good. Yes. That's awesome. I love that. Oh.
Yeah, it's just been, in a way, I feel I'm just starting and just getting to, because I've found my niche now, you know, or other people have found it for me. Mm-hmm. But if I can recommend one other book,
please.
I really think you should get hold of this one.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Drew, you're so sweet. Thank you. I have to say it means a lot coming from someone else who really loves locations and horror and all of it, that you like it. Thank you.
No problem. There was that's the thing. I mean, the other good thing is you get I do get a lot of gifts from people, you know, like that.
I'm surprised, yeah.
And I reciprocate, you know. Yeah, I now don't own any of the Wicker Man.
Oh no!
Given it to special, you know. But I'll send you the photograph of the Wicker Loop thing.
Yeah, I love that. If you're okay with it, it'd be nice to put it up as an image for our viewers to see, because I think that's so amazing. The way, like you said, it's even knowing that was there then changes how you listen to it. It's something that's both real and then psychological.
Exactly. It's like well, like the Sex Pistols room. You know, you just walk in. I mean, if the graffiti was covered up, it's just a big room. Yeah. But when you start to know the history, whether I'd like to have been there when they were there, probably not. But, maybe for a rehearsal or something. But it's, you know, I'm saying to my wife, this is where it started. A cultural revolution started in this room.
Oh, black.
But in saying that, it is it's great to have that counterpoint, because you know artists are like bloody mad. So if you had someone that's going, oh, that's amazing, you'd probably ruin yourself. So it's good to have that. Come on, hurry up.
Yeah. That's true. It's really great, because I don't know if you find this, and that works with sound as well. It's always in the balance.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's never what you think in the extreme. It's in the balance out that it all comes together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I do feel it's a kind of, I don't want to use the word, but a kind of destiny in a way. You know, I was working in a bakery last year, cleaning out the ovens, you know, and after a couple of days, one of the guys came up to me and he said, what did you do before this? And I said, well, I was a lecturer at the uni, and, you know, and all this. And he just kind of, and it was in a small town as well. And I could just see he was thinking, either this is true or he's off his head. And he just said, what are you doing here? You know, because, you know, and then one of the bosses Googled me. And the next day it was just, you know, so it was a bit kind of strange. But I was on this assembly line when I started, and one of the other boys, he was only about 18, said to me, oh, you know, Jim said that you used to lecture at uni. I was like, yeah. And I went into a Withnail moment, and I said, I've lectured at Cambridge and I'm reduced to this. But it was so over the top and so camp, you know. Everybody knew I wasn't even serious, but I was really. So yeah, that was a bit odd, because you've got to deal with your life and the way you see things and make art or whatever it is. And most people aren't in that world. And some people go, great, tell me about it. And other people are really paid off for some reason, you know. But you've got to do what you've got to do. That's the thing, isn't it? So there we have it.
That's beautiful advice. I might close on that. You got to do what you need to do. I love that. Thank you. I can't tell you enough. Thank you so much, Drew. It's been fantastic. People, I'll put up again his, Patreon and Instagram. Get in touch with him, listen to his music, read his books. It's absolutely as fascinating and wonderful in his person as he is in all of his work. So enjoy it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I'll send you some stuff in the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Wonderful. And of course, bye. And of course, thank you to the London Horror Movie Club.
If you want to share your thoughts about this episode, please head to our Facebook or YouTube pages. We're grateful to Cucurbit, who made our music. Thank you for listening, and please join us next time for the London Horror Movie Club.